I live in a small, quiet town. Everyone knows each other. We smile, we wave, and we say hello. Nothing exciting ever happens here. That is, until one day a new neighbor moved in. His name was Mr. Johnson. He was tall and always wore a black coat. He had a big, thick mustache and dark sunglasses. Mr. Johnson didn't talk much. He didn't wave or smile. He just walked around the town quietly, always looking around like he was searching for something. The people in the town started to talk. "Who is this Mr. Johnson?" they asked. "Why is he here?" But no one knew the answer. Some people thought he was just shy. Others said he was hiding something. One day, I decided to find out more. I watched him from my window. He walked slowly, always in the same direction, always looking at the same house. It was the old house at the end of the street, the one nobody lived in anymore. Why was Mr. Johnson interested in that house? I wondered. I had to know. So I made a plan. I would follow Mr. Johnson and see what he was up to. Maybe I could solve the mystery of the new neighbor. The next day, I waited by my window. I knew Mr. Johnson would walk by, just like he did every day. And he did. He wore his black coat and dark sunglasses. He walked slowly, looking at the old house again. This time, I followed him. I stayed far behind so he wouldn't see me. My heart was beating fast. What if he turned around? What if he caught me? But I kept going. Mr. Johnson reached the old house. He stopped in front of the gate and looked around. I hid behind a tree. He didn't see me. Then he did something strange. He opened the gate and went inside. I couldn't believe it. No one ever went into that house. It was old, empty, and dusty. But Mr. Johnson went in like he knew the place. I waited for a few minutes. Then I decided to get closer. I needed to see what he was doing. I walked quietly to the gate and peeked inside. The house was dark and I couldn't see much. But then I heard something, a noise from inside. It was a voice. Mr. Johnson was talking to someone, but who? The house was supposed to be empty. I wanted to hear more, but I was too scared to go inside. So I ran back home, my mind full of questions. Who was Mr. Johnson talking to? And why was he in that old house? I had to find out. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mr. Johnson and the old house. Who was he talking to? What was he doing in there? The next morning, I made a decision. I had to go back to the old house. This time, I would get closer. I needed to see what was really going on. I waited until Mr. Johnson left his house. As soon as he was gone, I hurried to the old house. I walked up to the gate and pushed it open. It made a loud creaking sound, but I didn't stop. I stepped inside the yard. The house looked even older up close. The windows were dirty and the door was cracked. I walked to the door and put my ear against it. Silence. I slowly turned the doorknob and to my surprise, the door opened. I stepped inside, my heart racing. The air was cold and smelled like dust. I looked around, but the room was empty. Then I heard it, a soft noise from upstairs. Someone was there. I tiptoed to the stairs and started to climb. Each step creaked under my feet. When I reached the top, I saw a shadow moving in the hallway. It wasn't Mr. Johnson. It was someone else. The shadow moved toward a room at the end of the hall. I followed quietly, trying not to make any noise. My hands were shaking, but I had to know who it was. I peeked around the corner, and then I saw them. 2 people standing close together whispering. One was Mr. Johnson, and the other was someone I didn't recognize. They were talking about something serious, but I couldn't hear the words. I moved a little closer, trying to listen. Suddenly, the floor creaked loudly under my foot. The 2 people stopped talking and turned toward me. They had seen me. My heart stopped. Mr. Johnson and the stranger stared at me. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. Mr. Johnson took off his dark sunglasses. His eyes were serious, but not angry. The stranger, a woman with short hair and a worried face, whispered something to him. Then she stepped forward. "Who are you?" she asked softly. I swallowed hard. I live down the street," I said. "I saw Mr. Johnson come here, and I wanted to know why." Mr. Johnson sighed and shook his head. "You shouldn't be here," he said, but his voice was calm. "This is not a safe place for you." "Why? What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to be brave. The woman looked at Mr. Johnson. He nodded, and she turned back to me. "This house belongs to someone we're trying to help," she explained. "It's not empty, but we can't tell you more. It's too dangerous." I was confused. "Dangerous? But this is just an old house. Why is it dangerous?" Mr. Johnson stepped closer. "You need to go home. Forget what you saw here. It's better for you." I didn't want to leave without answers, but I could see they weren't going to tell me anything more. The woman walked with me to the door. Before I left, she looked into my eyes. "Please, don't tell anyone about this," she said. "We're trying to protect someone. You don't want to get involved." I nodded, still unsure of what was really going on. I walked out of the house, feeling more confused than ever. Who was the woman? Who were they protecting? And what kind of danger could be hiding in our quiet little town? For days, I couldn't stop thinking about what happened at the old house. I wanted to know the truth, but I was also scared. What if the danger was real? One evening, as I was walking home from the store, I saw Mr. Johnson again. He was alone, standing by the old house. He saw me and waved me over. I hesitated, but then I walked up to him. "I'm sorry for what happened," he said. "I know you're curious. You deserve to know the truth." I was surprised. "What truth?" I asked. Mr. Johnson looked around to make sure no one was listening. Then he spoke quietly. "The woman you saw is my sister. We're hiding someone in that house, a witness. She saw something she shouldn't have, and now bad people are after her." "A witness?" I asked, trying to understand. "Yes," Mr. Johnson said. "She saw a crime, and now she's in danger. We're trying to keep her safe until the police can catch the criminals. That's why we've been so secretive." I was shocked. I never imagined something like this could happen in our small town. "Is she going to be okay?" I asked. Mr. Johnson nodded. "We hope so, but you have to promise not to tell anyone. If the wrong people find out, it could be very bad." I promised. I didn't want to put anyone in danger. Before I left, Mr. Johnson gave me a small smile. "Thank you for understanding," he said. "You've been brave, but now it's best if you stay away from the old house." I agreed. As I walked home, I felt a mix of emotions: fear, relief, and a strange sense of responsibility. I knew something important now, something I could never share. Our town seemed quiet and safe on the outside, but now I knew that even in the most ordinary places, extraordinary things can happen. And sometimes the biggest secrets are hidden in the most unexpected places.